chair here. So got it. Okay. All right, so I'll go ahead and get started. Well, thank you all for inviting me to your class. It's excited to be here on the Zoom with all of you. I'm glad you guys are all motivated to learn sign and to get better at the language. And I know it's a little awkward and overwhelming at first when you're getting there, but you'll get better as time goes on, right? All right, and thank you to your teacher as well for inviting me tonight. I know we had kind of it's hard, it's East Coast here, it's 10:30, so it's a little late, but you know what? That's okay. I'll be fine. So I didn't have too hard of a day today. Nice and easy day, so I have enough energy. We're good. Yay, perfect. Okay. So I want to explain a little bit about who I am, a little bit about my upbringing, and how I became the woman I am today. So again, my name is Mayra, Mayra. Last name is Castro, and this is my sign name. So my sign name has changed over the years, but it's kind of stuck with this now. So that's the one I prefer. I know that happens a lot. Sign names kind of change, but this one matches who I am, so I stick with that one. So I was born deaf, and my family is from Cuba. Mhm. And then they moved after I was born. So I do have two sisters. They are both hearing. I'm the only one deaf. I'm the youngest. I'm the baby, and I'm deaf. Yep. And again, I was the last child, so I'm the only deaf one. And my parents were just shocked that I was deaf. They didn't know what to do. My parents didn't speak English. Our home where I was born was largely Spanish speaking. And so I don't speak Spanish, but um, that is a problem that I've encountered with my language growing up, a bit of a language delay. When I was born until I was about 4 or 5, I feel like I didn't really have any language at all, really. So I didn't have any exposure to language of any kind. And so what I would see through my family, and with Cuban culture is, we gather a lot as a family. We're together a lot, and that's very normal. But there wasn't any signing going on. And so my father, he was kind of concerned on how we were going to communicate with each other. I was getting, that age 5 to 7 where you're going to start school, but I didn't have any schooling. I didn't have any education background there. So my dad decided to put me in a hearing school, and I started at age 5, and I went to the same school my siblings went to. It wasn't far from home. So my dad said, that's easy. We'll just put you in the same school. I was there for 2 years. And I was very alone. I was very isolated in that school. I didn't have a whole lot of friends. My progress in school, like academic wise, was very limited. Again, with no language access, it was hard to improve. And so I tried to do everything anyone else did, the activities, the learning, the educate, it just none of it was sticking. That was 5 to 7, 2 years. And then my dad went to the Board of Education meeting and kind of talked about, what are we going to do for my daughter? What are we going to do? And so they decided to put me in an oral school. It wasn't close to home. Like my first school was, it's about a 40-minute commute. I went by bus every day, back and forth to this oral school. And, again, it was an oral school, and that seemed to be more successful. They thought this will be the answer. I went there and I met some kids going through the same thing I was, and all of these kids were white. They were white kids. I think we had one black student, but as much as I can remember, there was only a few of us who were culturally Cuban, right? So it was not super diverse. um, and again, this was oral, so there was no signing yet. And it was a little traumatic. I did have a traumatic experience in the oral school. There was a lot of work to be done, but there was a lot of abuse that went on. Um, it was a very Southern school. It was very oral, and it was difficult, and it was hard to succeed, and I didn't really get any better, and I didn't speak. And my parents were, um, with their background and everything, it just, all of it kind of was a perfect storm to not do very well.
I can take over, Camille. So through my 14 years, I had no sign at all until I was 14 years old. I had no sign at all. So many of you may know that when you're born deaf, you're ready to sign. If you have that exposure, you should have exposure to ASL, not oral language. From 8 to 14, it was the oral program, and I had never met a deaf adult in my life at that time. So I didn't have, I couldn't imagine what that would be like. I was really uh deprived of that exposure. I didn't go to any deaf events. I'd never met a deaf, nothing at all. So I went into high school and they had like a deaf program. They would SimCom. They would say total communication is what they would call it. You would sign and speak at the same time. Not ASL. There was no ASL. That was in high school for the 4 years, and it was okay. I kind of would improve a little and then go down and then improve a little. So at my time, when I was a freshman, my first experience with sports, I joined the hearing team, and I was really nervous. I was not ready to join a hearing team, but I did well. I would play, but there was a problem with communication all the time, trying to communicate with the coach, the other players. It was just super frustrating. So I decided that I was going to ask for an interpreter. And so at that time, that interpreter didn't sign ASL either. So the high school was I was mainstreamed at that time, and that was in the 80s. So you didn't have like certifications and I didn't know anything about that until I found out later, when I went to college and learned a lot more. But in high school, I didn't have a certified interpreter. So they brought in, an interpreter for my sports, and I would try to kind of listen and pay attention and see what was going on, and it just sort of suffered through that. But for me, I struggled with my identity a lot. Since I was 5, I had no identity. I went to high school. I thought maybe I could kind of evaluate myself and really figure out who I am, and and find my identity as a deaf person, but I did not. That was in high school. And then I graduated and I went to college. Um, NDIK, the National Institute for the Deaf. I don't know if you know where that is. It's in Rochester, in New York. NTID. A lot of deaf go to NTID, and I was super nervous. So I went and I stayed there. That's like 7 hours from my home. So I stayed in a dorm, and that was my first experience ever being in a dorm. And I had a roommate that was deaf, and she signed beautifully. She had a deaf family. And so we went around meeting all these different people, and I was so overwhelmed. I didn't, it was like culture shock, but deaf culture shock. My culture was Cuban culture. I still had that inside, but I hadn't really, I didn't identify as Cuban either. So then I went to Rochester, and whoa, my passion, and I was really learning ASL and kind of learning. I had to take a class. I had to take an ASL class, and in Rochester, they really encouraged me to take an ASL class because I had grown up oral. So I had not been exposed to any ASL at all. So I went to Rochester and I said, "All right, I'm gonna roll up my sleeves and I'm gonna get to work." And I really started to learn the language. I had a tutor. I had to do one-on-one tutoring, and they would explain deaf history, and the timeline. You know, there is deaf history, and that's an important thing to know for the past up until now, and I learned all of that. And through my friends, they all went to deaf schools, deaf institutes, like 90% of them. So they were from maybe 10% were mainstreamed, but yeah, yeah. So I really started to change who I was. Finally, I hadn't really identified, but I was just on the way. Was I fully? Yeah, I'm deaf now, but I was kind of halvesies. I was on the fence about it. So as I was progressing through, I stayed 4 years. That was my plan. But then after 2 years, my dad died. So I had to go back. I left Rochester, and I had to go take care of my mom. And I told my mom, I'm ready to go to Gallaudet. I want to go to Gallaudet. That was 1992. It was later. So before that, I was just working back at this hearing company in a hearing environment, and I did not enjoy that. It was really frustrating, a lot of misunderstandings. Uh, just I couldn't follow the work, I couldn't keep up. And so at that time, if you remember, and that was in the 90s. So the ADA policy, that was 90? Yeah, I think 90 at that time. So before there was no law that would like help protect me in the work environment. So I just did not fit in, and it was hard for me to kind of assimilate into the hearing world. I was just really limited. So I decided I was going to apply to Gallaudet, and I kind of told my family, "Hey, it's time for me to go. I gotta go to Gallaudet." It was 1992, and whew, it was a big change. Gallaudet at that time, ooh, it was a good experience for me. Finally, I could really meet one-on-one with deaf professors. There were many deaf professors, and I met a lot of deaf, and I just felt really good about it. I felt ready to get to work and to learn and to sign. And my receptive skills at that time, I needed improvement at my receptive skills. So I was able to do that, and I picked it up, and I was at school and socializing, sports, events, had organizations. I was very involved. One specifically, Gallaudet has a like a Spanish or Hispanic deaf organization. And oh, I was thrilled because that's me. I'm Hispanic, I'm Cuban, Latina, yeah, because I'm a female, Latina. Yeah, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud to be Hispanic. And so I met other people in that organization, and I went, "Whoa, you feel like family." They are my family. And so I just fell in love with that. I was so involved with that organization. I was the vice president, I was the treasurer. I did leadership training. Gallaudet actually paid me to fly, to be on, to do like speeches and answer questions. And I did a lot of learning through that. So Gallaudet, yeah, Gallaudet has a lot of power. It changed my life. It really changed my life. Finally, yeah, I was able to identify. You remember I was saying I was kind of on the fence, and finally now, when I'm 28, imagine being 28 years old, and finally you can identify yourself and know who you are. So I'm really grateful to Gallaudet for changing my life. So I went through school, finished. I majored in psychology. And because I was just so enamored with that, I was enamored with psychology. So my older brother, he uh, has a lot of mental health illnesses, a lot of issues, schizophrenia. Yeah, yeah, mental health issues. So I grew up with him. I've seen that. I've seen that struggle and that communication. Um, when he was 9, he became he became schizophrenic at 21. So, and he's so smart. And so that just came from the genes in our family. It skips generations, and it just happened to hit him. And so that's how I became so involved with psychology. I love it because I could really, you could go work in many different fields. You could be a therapist, like an alcohol counselor for alcohol addiction, all different things. So 35 years I worked. And really, I'm most like with nonprofit organizations. That's mostly what I did. And it was so awesome to have those experiences, the personal experiences, to see the growth. And so from there, I did a lot of training and did a lot of leadership for deaf patients or deaf clients. I would really encourage people. Uh, it was a good opportunity for them to be involved with leadership for themselves as well. And so that 35 years, that's what I did. And then I I just became the director, the founder of a camp Soul for the deaf. So the goal, the dream is for the youth, for from like 9 to 17. That's the age range. So we were founded in 2016, uh, for local for this New Jersey area. So I own this organization here in New Jersey. Maybe 1 hour and a half, and we'll go, and it's a stay away camp. And so my first experience doing that. So, being a director, having people, and I need to know how to run the camp. It's important. So and I do have experience. Yeah, I have the skills, I have the leadership experience. So it really helps me to, uh, with this process of founding this camp and hiring counselors. We have a board members as well, and they're all deaf, including the children, the youth. Yeah, why? Yeah, it's very diverse. There's a lot. So everybody, yeah, we have black kids, white kids, Spanish. Well, yeah, we can see them. We can see them grow up and become leaders. Yeah, we can see it. So that's why I founded the camp, because in general you don't see that, but I know that it's possible. So I founded this camp. Um, so Mark said in New York, it's a couple hours from here. Yeah, many years there was a camp up there, and I was a counselor. So I kind of got the feel for it, got the vibe, and I was not satisfied. There were a lot of white kids, there were no black kids, there were no Hispanic kids, and I just kind of felt like, you know, families, black kids, Hispanic kids, like low income, they can't afford it. They can't afford to go to camps. So that camp was like $1,700. So I'm sure that was the issue. So when I had this vision for this camp, I wrote a grant so that I could get this money and then be able to help the parents pay for the camps. Yeah, parents do have to pay, maybe they pay a fourth of the total amount to send their kids to camp for a week. So their other camps, I say, yeah, they're doing great, but I want to focus on this. This is my group, the Black and Hispanic diversity, yeah, Asian too, Asian as well, just that diverse group. And that has grown and grown and grown. It started in 2016, 2017, 2018. My mom died. She passed away. And so, that was difficult for me. I kind of had to work hard to put my focus back on the camp and move on from that. And I've really enjoyed it. The youth are so positive, the outcomes are so positive, and those kids have told me they feel like they want to stay with their family, they want to stay home. They don't want to go, they don't want to go, they don't want to stay, but the time is running out. They don't want to go home. I'm saying, so the money is only including 1 week. So the kids are saying they don't want to go home. So the director of the camp also said they were so inspired. The kids have shared their stories, and it's been such a positive experience. And they've already become leaders, and we can already see, yeah, so it's been a lot of helping them, teaching them ASL. Now, today, children, a lot of children are mainstreamed. So many. Really, there's one deaf institute here. There's one. New Jersey has one. It's in the South. But the numbers are dwindling. I'm sure that some of you have already seen or experienced that, maybe in a film or read articles or something, that all of the deaf schools are getting smaller and smaller, and it's a big concern where those children will go. So now a lot of them are being mainstreamed or in day programs, and it's really disappointing because there's not deaf adults, deaf teachers. There's not many. And that's a big concern. Where do the children go? So trying to stay positive and show them a different way that they can, that's my responsibility. That's my part, as my vision, part of my goal, to be able to contact the families and kind of educate the parents as well. So now we're hosting a STEM, uh, a science, technology, engineering, and mathematic. I'm sure you've heard of that STEM, very popular. Yeah. So me and another coordinator are gonna host soon on April 6th. Uh, yeah, we're really excited. We're so thrilled. It doesn't matter if it ends up being small or big. It's just important that we're having that exposure and that education and an opportunity to socialize. And I think maybe include the parents as well in the future. Whatever the events, we should have the parents come and teach the ASL to the parents as well. Because today in the homes, the environment, generally parents don't sign. Do you know like 97%? Today it's gone at 86%, 87% of parents do not sign. They're not good at ASL. How are they communicating with their children? How are the parents communicating with their children? And that obviously has a big impact on children today. So we're really encouraging them.
So it is my plan to do more outreach with the community and more events like that, and hopefully improve those numbers a little bit. So your teacher asked me if I had a Facebook page. And I do have for the deaf Latin community, where we all come together, we all share our stories, we share discourse with each other, discuss goals within the community, and everything like that. And we love coffee. Of course, we love coffee. And so we have coffee chats a lot of the times. There are three of us, there's two others, myself included, that are directors of this program. And so we like to provide opportunity to have discussions, panels, that kind of thing that are related to um, Latin issues, Latin topics. We love to hear success stories. We love to talk to business owners, and not only them, but white business owners as well. We like to grow our community and really reach out to others and work together. And I've noticed that when we take in different points of view and different perspectives and things like that, we all really benefit. So we're doing a once a month thing right now. I'm kind of slow going, but hopefully, well, and then we had COVID, and so everything kind of took a standstill at that point in 2020, right? Can't believe that was already 4 years ago, right? But anyway, so that was a big impact. So we set up a Facebook page around that time when we couldn't get together in person as much anymore. I think we had 600, maybe 700 members, and we are still growing. And so we're hoping to kind of expand into education and development. And again, we work with business owners to prove that, Latin people can do these things, deaf Latin people can do these things. And it's a really positive thing to work together and to share things with each other within our community. And, like I said, a lot of times the Black community, the Latin community struggles to find work, to keep work. And so it's a really uplifting, encouraging group that provides opportunities for jobs, for job trainings. We provide workshops, and a lot of business owners attend those, and we have interpreters for all of those. And so that's something that our community really does to uplift each other and encourage each other and just encourage that success and foster that for our community. So it's a very whew, it's a thing. Oh, my energy's kind of getting a little lower, but um we just keep going even when we have those tough times. And when we empower each other, even when we're feeling down or we're feeling like we're stuck in a rut or anything like that, we kind of shift focus and try to see what we can do, what we can suggest to each other, and see how we can improve each other's lives. And even as we get older, it seems harder as we do, but we just got to keep on keeping on within our community. I love my community. It's my passion. It's my heart to give everything I can to these people. And that's just my personality too. I'm a giver. I'm an encourager. So I don't think I'll ever stop. But so one of the things that let me see how to say this. One of the most frustrating things that I deal with now is school. Schools frustrate me. Especially relating to deaf kids. And like I said, they're mainstreamed a lot of the times, might have one here, two here, three here. There's small numbers of deaf kids in these schools. And I'm wondering, where are these kids learning? How are they learning to socialize with each other when they don't see each other? They aren't gaining those social skills. They aren't learning that naturally like the hearing kids would in the big groups, especially if they're not getting it from their family either. Those skills are really, really declining. And with technology now as well, we're back to texting and video chatting, and technology has really taken over the interactive part of life, really. And so a goal of mine is for our board members, our committee, to kind of have a different strategy as far as working with the schools, doing outreach within the schools to go present in person and have a deaf adult there to show that deaf adults can succeed, deaf can. I think that's so important. And we want to go to those schools where it doesn't matter if there's only one student, two or three. I want to go and I want to get us in there and have that, have eyes on each other and meet each other in person. I think that's really key to have that exposure for ASL use. And a lot of the young students that have the cochlears or the hearing aids or anything like that, um, for me, it's tough to support that or to accept the cochlear implants. Personally, I don't. Um, they don't often use ASL. They will try to fill in those blanks with what they can hear through the cochlears, and they might go to a more oral training program like I went through, or try to become hearing, if you will. And it's harder for them to pick up the language or to have that deaf identity that I emphasized earlier is so important. That developing that identity for yourself is huge. And so it's a concern of mine that kids that have these implants nowadays, they don't have that because they don't have the opportunity for it. And I don't know if we need to have some kind of licensing or counseling or observation or something official where we can record data and prove, to our board and our committee and to government, to legislature, that if we could start having laws that encourage the ASL use, and especially in schools, having one big deaf school, like I mentioned, instead of having all these kids spread out alone in these schools. And so that's a big goal of mine and a hope that I have for the future, is that we can bring these kids all together and have that sense of community for them that they're not getting right now. So anyway, that's my story. So does anybody have any questions for me? Let me see if I can get the screen back here. Anybody? Questions? We talked about cochlear implants, talked about some frustrations with growing up, how she was raised. Anything? Nothing?
I have a question. So, what do you suggest parents that have deaf children and they're hearing, like, what do you suggest they do as far as getting the education and getting the kid, your deaf child, the proper
Okay, good
learning?
question. Yeah, sure, good question. So right now, I am an ASL teacher myself. And I do Zoom just like this. I work with families one-on-one through their agencies. We have a sign language agency kind of hub that they hire me through. And I also work with Hispanic families via Zoom. And I'm always shocked when I meet these families that are Hispanic and they're motivated to learn ASL. It's awesome. It just thrills me to have that experience. Um, so now, I didn't have that communication, like I said, for years, and now we have families that are more interested in picking it up at a young age and having that. And so I'll take the opportunity to do the language part of it, but also to talk about deaf culture too, kind of educate on that a little bit, not too in depth because it gets a little overwhelming if we get too in depth, but just the basics, just kind of touch on it a little bit here and there and explain, go through the vocab and build that up for them as far as what they need to communicate for basics and stuff. And then we kind of go back and forth. We talk about facial expressions and how those play into the language. And it is a slow process. It's not an overnight thing, but I try to keep these families motivated, right, to communicate with their own children. And so instead of preventing communication or blocking communication, we want it to have like a safe space for communication to be open with everybody, with the kids, with the parents, and everybody signing rather than speaking. We don't do speaking, we do voice off, right? When the families come in, when we first meet the families, I don't use my voice at all, completely voice off. And in that first meeting, we have an interpreter, usually. Second meeting, we'll have an interpreter. Third meeting, it's just us. And that really helps the families improve to have to use it. Um, and then their kids go out and they go to events and they go to things, and it's exciting to see that they can communicate and that they can have the full experience rather than that isolation that these kids will feel if they don't have it. And so sometimes we'll even plan events to get these kids together so that they can have that opportunity. It's really cool. But yeah, that's what I do.
I'm wondering also if social media and Facebook and other things of that nature have provided more opportunity for deaf children who are otherwise feeling isolated and ostracized to be able to connect with each other and with the culture, or if the families are not quite understanding the importance of that and are not taking advantage of that as much. So I guess that, and also, what do you think would be really good ways to improve in like social media, virtual connections, Zoom, especially for kids who live in rural places that they can't maybe have that more in-person experiences? Thank you.
Okay, sure. So there's kind of positive and negative to social media, right? Good side, bad side. Facebook obviously has, schools usually have their own pages for social media. And I've seen a lot of like PTA groups that meet through Facebook, different agencies, things like that. Parent organizations, anyway, they have their pages, right? And I see a lot of people post on those through the school, through the parents, and then they see things that way, or get invited to things that way, to events and different social activities. But as far as let me think, like most parents don't have their own, commitment to making this happen, which is pretty sad. Maybe they'll happen to see it and then they'll go, but these kids feel really isolated because they don't have the parents that are motivated to go out and find these events, right? And so we as a committee are trying to get in touch with the school and send flyers, send advertisements, send, in English and in Spanish. We make sure to include all of the languages when we can, and we blast it out to the community as much as we can. And remember that the schools are often confidential, right? And so they don't allow us to share things on our pages because they're blocked, because they're, limited to the school community, which is understandable. But we try to contact the schools directly, so they can post it on their Facebook and their social media, and let the parents see it that way for our events. We also have deaf mentors that will, see a position open, contact a parent and say, hey, I heard this was going on, you know, come with me, we'll go do this visit, we'll go do this event, or things like that. And that's a pretty cool thing when that happens, and that kind of grows the community too, or we're trying anyway. Yeah, John Paul. Yeah. So we had a good question here as well. It's just like here in Miami, you were talking about getting in touch with the community and throwing out flyers and events and posters and things like that to share with teachers and teachers of the deaf and things like that. Um, a lot of people say, we need to ask the principal's permission before we can post that, or before we can share that. And that's just an example for like an ASL story time for kids to come watch ASL stories, right? Some parents will say, oh, that sounds good, but it's too far. I can't go that far. That's a big commute, or there's all these different excuses. We're busy that day. We can't do it, and the deaf kids do what? They just stay home. That's what they do. They're at home by themselves. And so we talked about having the grant, right? We've written grants before, to support these, to have people come on Saturdays and have the school open and have all these events to do, or maybe go to the library as a big group to do the story time, or things like that. But it's just this overwhelming process, and there's a lot involved in red tape and fine print and all of that. And so it is a big thing that we struggle with all across the country, because there are kids who are motivated, and a lot of hearing kids will come to these things, right? Hearing kids want to go learn ASL, and they'll take their kids to that, but they're not even deaf, but the parents with the deaf kids don't want to go. And it's like, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, So we all are trying to encourage our deaf community and our families to be more motivated to get out and be social. But looking into the future, right? We're hoping that these kids will become more frustrated and learning what happened, and ask their parents, in retrospect, why did you do this? Why didn't you take me to things? This would have really benefited me. and then we can kind of break the cycle going forward and change things.
Switching interpreters. So talking about his parents that are deaf, and they have to have motivation, yeah, to learn ASL, and they had kids that are deaf, and so that's real. So 90% when children are deaf but their parents are hearing, they go, it's just old. They do an old fashioned. They, oh, it's a lot of work. Oh, and so they just, yeah, it takes a lot. I've tried my best to really fight for their rights, to try to pull them in to be able to socialize, and the parents need to socialize as well. And the parents ask, "How are you doing this?" "Oh, you're doing great." "Oh, yeah." And then they'll get more motivated. They'll see other parents, "Oh, how do you sign so well?" Yeah, because I go and interact and I can pick it up. Yeah, I just want to add, Myra saying, I just want to add, my father called me, a father called me last week, and his daughter is 9. His daughter's 9. And he was saying, I feel awkward. She's asking me questions, and I feel awkward about it because his daughter is put into an oral program, in a day program, still in an oral school. And I asked, what's the name of that school? I'm just curious. I know the area here. There's 32 schools all around. He said, so just tell me the name of that school. Uh, Sublight? They said their philosophy, is strong oral, summit, strong oral. Age Bell, AG Bell, yeah, his philosophy. So, and it hasn't changed since then. So how do I have a discussion with that father? Because I just decided that I'm going to educate him about ASL. It's really important. You need to be exposed to that language. That language acquisition is so important. Yeah, you can have like speech therapy or some, oral system is fine if you have ASL as well. You can't reject, and we're not saying like when we're saying ASL, come to the workshop, learn ASL, we're not rejecting. I never say that we're rejecting the oral program. I'm saying, yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, come to the ASL workshop, come sign up. Give me the info. And the father seemed really awkward about it. And he seemed really nervous. I could tell that he was nervous. And so I met him. Yeah, I'm going to meet him on April 6th. We're going to have an interpreter come with us. And so we can have a discussion and then he can feel more comfortable because I think he's really confused because that school, you see, okay, so there are other schools that are open-minded and there are schools that do not accept ASL. Most schools do not accept ASL. And I've noticed like audiologists, most audiologists, doctors, typically they'll tell the parents wrong information. And they obviously are not using appropriate resources. And that's really sad. The audiologists or doctors, they are not referring, oh, we have an ASL teacher, an ASL program, or there's deaf events, encouraging them to be involved with the community. Still today, that's an issue. Yeah, it's really sad. Jean-Paul is saying, so now any more questions? More questions? Mayra and I have experienced that at all different, yeah, all over. We've seen, they think it's easy, but no. We were raised with a lot of frustrations, a lot of negatives, and there's positives as well. Now today with technology, changes have been made, but parents still need to learn ASL. Yeah, ASL is a must. It's a must. To be able to communicate with your children is a must. You can't force parents. You have to decide for yourself, but it really is so important. So good luck to you, students. You're lucky. You're lucky now that you're taking ASL, and then you'll be parents someday. Stacy, you're on mute. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I just want to, just as an example, I have a friend who has a deaf son. I believe he's 4 now. And I think we have one deaf school here in Vegas because they did reach out to her. But she was saying that they're considering moving because there's just not a lot of resources that she's found here. So
Said, wow. And saying, yeah, so that Mayra's saying, and that's not the only in Las Vegas. That's a nationwide issue in a lot of states. Most states are having an issue with resources. They're lacking, and they need more. It's a philosophy problem, really. What's the philosophy in that struggle back and forth, that power struggle? You have to be open-minded and open-hearted and be able, like, go and visit Gallaudet and listen. They have wonderful workshops. They really explain how parents like that emotional process that they work through. Their baby's born and they're deaf, and what do you do? They provide a lot of education in relation to that. Provide so much. And most schools aren't sharing resources like that. They're not uh giving that easy access to parents, and that's really sad. Gallaudet has, it's called I think American Society of the Deaf Children. That's the name of the organization in Gallaudet, and it's amazing. That program is so good. They have so many resources. Maybe you've seen it on Facebook. I recommend that you go and look at their Facebook, American Society for Deaf Children. Oh, it's just so great. They have workshops, they have trips, they provide families opportunities to go on trips, 2-day, 3-day trips, weekend trips, that because parents can be involved in the weekends and they can all get together and go. So different things like that. So, and that's a good opportunity. But here, schools or Las Vegas or other states, they are restricting, they're holding back, they're sweeping it under the rug. They don't want to have that be open access. Also, oh, yeah, also, Stacy, you were just saying you can't find any resources. Resources. Yeah, but maybe so the parents need to contact Las Vegas Agency of the Deaf, Association of the Deaf. They can refer you to, and they'll have a list of yeah, the towns and cities and things. If they fail after that, then you kind of reach out further. California, you can find out in California, they have an association of the deaf, and kind of get referrals that way. And yeah, maybe, you can find maybe number one, like for example, myself, when I was raised, I flew Venezuela and I flew to California. My parents were really doing a lot of research, trying to find where was the deaf school. Oh, and finally they found a deaf school in California, Association of the Deaf, eh, Fresno, that area. Yeah. Oh, that area. Sacramento, no, Fresno. Oh, yeah, kind of a farm area. Yeah, so they're in that area, and then that's where so I was really lucky that, in Venezuela, I was just labeled as mentally retarded. That's the words that they used, mentally retarded. That's just that's the label that was given to me. And my parents were not happy with that. They were saying, nope, we're going to go to California. Say, no, he's not mentally retarded. No, that he's deaf. Ooh, and my parents were like, oh, yeah, okay, great. So they moved to California, and that's where I was raised until they moved. Oh, they planned to move to New York. Nope. And then they moved here to Miami. And that's where I was raised. Oh, thank God my parents, if not, if we just stayed in Venezuela and I was just labeled as mentally retarded forever, oh, thank God that's not what happened. In Venezuela, the country is awful. They do not have good education. I'm so happy that we moved here to America. I'm so grateful that I was able to pick up the language, and I'm grateful to my parents a lot. And now I take care of my parents. They raised me, and now it's my turn and I get to take care of them. Also, I wanted to add, remember talking about identity. Children struggle a lot if they have no identity. There's a lot of confusion. They're, hard of hearing or oral or deaf mute. Yeah, that say so for me, talking about psychology, I had a response paper and I got that, and so I was reading through it, and I think I was 14 or 15. Deaf mute? Me? And I was so confused. I asked my mom and dad, it's talking about me, deaf mute. And I was so angry. Mute? No, no. That psychology or audiologist put down deaf mute. Imagine that was in the 70s until really still today. Sometimes they'll put down that as like a diagnosis, deaf mute. Ugh, that's just that audiologists, doctors, they're very close-minded. They're not open-minded, open-hearted, willing to listen to deaf adults and get that education. So, yeah, right. Yeah, Myra. Yeah, I agree with her. Other questions, other comments? Myra, other questions or comments? Uh, oh, yeah. So now I'm studying language. I'm studying, yeah, this May I'll graduate. The goal, listening and spoken language linguistics. So I'm working on a certification, so ASL teacher certification. So yeah, 60 years soon I'll be 60 years old, and I'm just going, oh my goodness. Ooh, my mind is running, but I'm okay. I'm surviving. I'm really studying, working hard, working on my papers, doing my research. I feel there's a lot of benefits, going to college, State University, Moderna State University here. Yeah, now here in Chicago, a Zoom class that I'm taking online. But today I feel, yeah, there's a big benefit to that. Providing the education, to students that want to become interpreters. And I'm hoping that I can have a job at a high school as well, teaching ASL. So I believe that ASL is so important. So it's an important language for all deaf children. It's important. Yay! Good job. Yeah, you never gave up. You never gave up. Do you have any more questions? Myra's asking any more questions? Myra, you never gave up. Good. Yeah, you just kept going and you kept studying and learning. Yeah, I will. I will continue to do that. Ethan, you had no questions? Uh, life experience, how I was raised, college experience. Um, to answer your question, your future, you want to become a teacher, an ASL teacher. Whenever you get that certification, what are you going to do after that? Whenever I get my certification this May, after that, I will search for a job, maybe in Florida. Maybe in Florida. Yay, Florida. Maybe I'll move to Florida. St. Augustine. St. Augustine. Yeah, there's a deaf school there. Do you know about that? The deaf school in St. Augustine? Yeah, Florida School for the Deaf. Yeah, FSDB. Yeah, Florida School for the Deaf and Blind. St. Augustine, do you know about it? Well, so that I want to move there, but it depends. It depends if there's a job opening. High school, yeah, possible, but I want to work in college, but I'm not ready yet. Whenever I feel ready, I feel ready for high school right now. I'll work there. Maybe I'll transpo, be able to Flagler College. Maybe, yeah, maybe I can do that. So I want that job. So we'll see. So we'll see. And have you been to Orlando? Have you Valencia, the college? They have an ASL too, or in Orlando? In Orlando? Yeah. Ooh. Yeah, maybe you refer me. That'll help. That'll help. Yeah. Yeah, I can send you a few more actually. Yeah. Perfect. Great. Any more questions? Who has already had a question? Who has already raise your hand if you've already asked? Yeah, Stacy's already asked a question. Trisha's already asked a question. Veronica, Ethan, Peter, Nicole, Karen. You need to ask something. because of a participation grade.
Come on, you guys are so quiet tonight. All right, Karen, go for it.
How did you feel growing up with your parents? Was it harder to communicate with them, or did they were they able to like learn ASL?
Well, when I was growing up, it was very frustrating for my parents, right? They didn't have any way to communicate with me, but we gestured a lot, right? It wasn't really a language, but just gesturing, and that was most of my upbringing. A lot of miscommunications happened, trying to just figure out what we were trying to talk to each other, and my siblings would kind of interpret, quote unquote, for me, right? Kind of help with mom and dad, and I relied on them a lot, and they didn't like that. They didn't want to be my interpreters. They complained about it quite often, actually, but they were necessary for communication for my parents and I. So it was a big struggle for the whole family, but my parents, again, they spoke Spanish. They didn't speak English. Spanish was the primary language in our home, and so um, they they didn't allow English speaking, actually. And so with me being deaf and my parents speaking Spanish, and I was learning oral communication, it was just, again, it was just kind of a nightmare all around. But as adults, I think when I was about 23, I brought my friends with me to I think it was maybe Thanksgiving or something like that. And we all signed at the table, right, while we were eating. And my parents had never seen that before. That was the first time that they experienced signing, and they were really curious about it. And so my parents kind of finally accepted that that was the way to communicate, right? And so and they knew how frustrating it was growing up. They were as frustrated as I was with the communication breakdown and the lack thereof, right? But they saw how easy it was for me to chat with my friends, and so my family would just kind of speak around me a lot, which happens a lot to deaf people, right? And it was kind of the same but opposite for them when we were signing. They just said, "Oh, this is how she's felt the whole time," right? And so they didn't really have a clue until I graduated from Gallaudet, and my parents realized that ASL is an important language, and it's important to my life and for communication and everything like that. And so I gave them a book. It was a Spanish ASL book, and it was a big one. It was a real thick book, right? And they kind of looked through it and picked through words here and there, and um, they weren't super motivated to learn the entire language, but they had it on their table, easy to access, and they used it when they needed to. And so they did accept who I was, my identity as a deaf person, and that I used ASL once I was an adult. But thank you. That was a good question. Yeah, go ahead.
I wonder if you have recommendations for us learning ASL to, I guess, to incorporate more ASL into our communities, into our daily lives, maybe to grow more people seeing ASL, more people experiencing it, so that maybe it becomes more normative and more a frequent part of other people's daily life. Any suggestions?
Sure. Yeah, sure. So, I wouldn't follow a book per se. Um, I would use, classifiers are really important, right? Classifiers are key, really, for the language. Also, I would use videos a lot, watch stories, ASL stories. Those are hugely impactful. And I would show those around. And it's not so much from a book. Again, like I said, people come up with their own stories, and those are great. And it's not easy to come up with those, right? But measuring how well a student is learning as far as classifiers, whether they know them or not, um, it kind of is a measure of success in that way. So again, classifiers, stories, just being hands up, really. Keep up with the vocab, have daily discussions, maybe comments on videos, And I know it's hard to watch those videos, but you got to keep watching them to practice signing and to get the feedback and to really improve, right? Get out with the deaf community, mingle with the community and use it socially, be hands up, you know, and get involved with the culture, right? Try to embody those values that the deaf culture has. Yeah, sure. Perfect. Who's next?
I had a question about your siblings because I know somebody else asked about the relationship with your parents, and you said it was frustrating for them to be your interpreters all the time. But how was your relationship with just them outside of being the interpreters for your parents? Like I know already, like I'm hearing and my siblings are hearing, and already when we were growing up, there's like conflict sometimes. It's just like a sibling thing. And then once we get older, we kind of mellow out a little bit. Was that more difficult, or how was your relationship with your siblings?
Well, so my brother and my sister, their relationship is very strong. They love each other, right? But okay, hold on, let me back up a little bit. So I have my oldest is 8 years apart, right? From me, 8 years older than me. And so we have a lot of differences. We don't have a lot in common, right? Really, I'm closest to my third sibling. I'm the youngest. My sister is the second child. We're 7 years apart. She was pretty young. I think when she was 18, she got married. Married at 18. Can you believe? Anyway, so she kind of went off on her own. And I was pretty young at that time. And so we didn't have much of a relationship because she was off on her own, doing her own thing. And so she wasn't really able to interpret for me a lot. And it was worse for my brother too. And so, you know, they kind of just gave up and it kind of moved on to my closest in age sibling, right? And and my parents, again, we struggled a lot, many years. We struggled to communicate, and my siblings saw that, and my closest in age sibling, right? We were kind of joined at the hip, right? And I'd always be saying, "What are they saying? What are they saying?" You know, like I said, kind of interpreting, and it was all day, every day, all the time. Breakfast, lunch, dinner. If we ever went out as a family, we were doing things, just anything, you know. And so now my sister and my closest in age, science, which is great with finger spells, right? Just kind of basic stuff. And we live pretty far apart, right? So we don't see each other often, but she did pick up sign for me. So that's right. And she is hearing. So
How
yeah,
old is she
it's
compared
important
to
for
you?
communication, but there's a lot of struggle with that, but we made it work.
How many years apart is the closest sibling?
2 years apart. So we're the closest. Yeah. Yeah. And still, we're still the closest. And
He's a lawyer. He knows the ADA law, the laws of communication, language access. He knows. Yeah, he's aware of all of that. He's been there, done that. So he's a really good advocate for me. Yeah, very, very good. So so I'm lucky to have my brother. Yeah.
I have a question.
Ethan?
So I remember you said back in high school you went through a program where they signed and spoke at the same time. Do you think that would be something, continuing from Peter's question, that could be used to engage more people into ASL and bring a more diverse community into it? Because that's the first time I've heard of that program, and I never knew any high school could have that.
Okay. So in the 1970s to the 90s, Do you remember there was no like recognition of ASL at all? The language was mixed. It was a mixed language. It was like PSE, CEE, total communication, SimCom. It was a big mess at that time, the 70s. So at my time in the oral school, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, all of those ages, that was quote unquote total communication. SimCom and total communication, back those two. It was just a mix. It was not, it doesn't apply to ASL. It's a separate, it's the ability to speak well. You have to be able to speak well. So at that school or their philosophy, their idea was speech, oral communication is better. The sign kind of gets brushed aside. It was forbidden, really. The sign language said, don't sign, don't sign, don't sign. So I had a bad experience myself. One of the students was signing and I'd never seen sign before, and I wasn't really sure. Is that ASL? And they were kind of signing. His father was deaf, or that student's father was deaf. And I said, I want to learn. What are you doing? You're signing, and I was in big trouble. I got punished. Like a ruler slapped on my hands, and whoa, that hurt so bad. Yeah, so I mean, it was abusive, and I have a lot of trauma that from that experience. That was really frustrating. So whenever I saw that sign, I wanted to sign as well, but nope, it was forbidden. So it was a very complicated form of communication. That mode of communication does not work. Whoever decided that it had to be an audiologist or a doctor or something that they got together in a meeting and said, oh, okay, these communication modes aren't working. And it failed. Really, the oral program in general is a failure. Yeah, thank you for your question. Another question?
Question.
Somebody speaking? Sorry.
It's me. I'm not sure how to form my question, but I remember you were talking about the high schools and other elementary schools and just deaf schools in general just declining. And I did see that on a Netflix show called Queer Eye, one of the episodes where there was a deaf football coach for a deaf high school. I don't remember the name, but he was working really hard on trying to keep his program alive for his students. And I'm just wondering, like, is the government not funding these schools too, besides not being able to provide like teachers or anything? I guess that's kind of my question. Like, what else can there be done for these schools?
I believe, so schools, the politics, we're talking about politics, really. So that money has been cut. The funding has been cut. People, the people that have looked at and they've noticed that schools are declining, and they want to take over that, then they possibly so like the programs are dwindling, the students are so really the average deaf institute has like 800 students in the past. In like the 70s they would have in 2000s, yeah, they could be really big, 800, 900 students. And now like 60 kids, that's the average. So that's a big difference. Yeah, they've been cutting their budgets, budgeting issues, financial problems, but really, I think that's not true. I think it can't be financial problems. I think they just do not want kids to go to deaf schools. I think that's the problem. I think that we really need to take care in our deaf schools and keep those programs running and expanding. That's what I want. But the problem is hiring deaf educators. There's not enough deaf teachers. It's they most of the time they have hearing teachers, and there's less and less deaf teachers, and there's that big struggle there. So I think I think there's a problem with money cutting programs, plus children getting cochlear implants more and more and more and more, and then transferring to like special school hearing schools, transferring, just leaving, not going to deaf schools anymore. It's a very sticky situation. Yeah, you can ask Jean Paul, you can ask your teacher about that. He knows about that as well. So deaf schools used to be big and now they're small because of budget cuts, because of the federal government, politics, that run around. Having enough interpreters, they're lacking interpreters. Um, so they have like inclusion issues. Yeah, so my school here in Miami-Dade, their goal is to have a deaf student program and it failed. No more. They had to send them all away. No deaf educators, no deaf education, and that was really unfortunate. I'm lucky that I used to be a teacher of the deaf and work with behavioral issues. And now I'm an ASL teacher and I love that. Same. Yeah, ASL schools, the same as like deaf schools, dwindling ASL programs are just, so I'm lucky that I was able to stay and I'll stay here until I retire. Also, to let you know, I've met a few deaf teachers, elementary, high school. Some teachers like failed their tests. They failed their certification tests. The state, most often states require tests that you have to take certification. You know that you have to be certified, and then you can be a teacher to be able to teach high school. But they would fail. Many of them failed. Like 70%. 70% of teachers fail that test. But they have skills in signing ASL. They know deaf culture. They have the ability. There's opportunities. Hearing teachers, they pass the certification test, but they don't know ASL. They don't know deaf culture. And so there's a big difference there. So why can't these people be hired? The deaf people instead of the hearing people. They're deaf. They should be hired. They have the skills that they need. They have the skills of ASL. The hearing people don't. So you can see that kind of discrepancy there. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's a fact. So I was talking with my lawyer and he told me, why are people are failing? This test for teachers for the deaf education is very complex. Yeah, it's oral. It's an oral, and so they're saying they don't really get what's going on. But if it was in sign, it only has two questions. No big deal, two questions. So here, the hearing people, oh, I don't understand, but they would only fail two questions on the test instead of having to read lips for 98% of the questions. So they say, no, you need to change it. You need to remove that oral part of it and change it to sign for the deaf. I am deaf. I'm going to take a test. I'm deaf. I'm going to take 2 times. I failed. I flew and I said, oh, no, 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 no. I'm not going to do an oral program. I did. Nope. I'm done. I give up. I'm going to switch to an ASL program. Yeah, so this is not made for deaf. Yeah, this is a hearing impaired. They don't say deaf, they say hearing impaired. Say, oh my gosh, that is so old-fashioned. Hearing impaired. They haven't changed. My lawyer was reading it saying, no, everything just has to be thrown out. It's too old-fashioned, this whole oral system. Yeah, it's just a mess. So yeah, it's very sad. It's very sad. So last thing I want to say before we close, AG Bell. Ooh. He was a strong believer in the oral program. He was vicious. So he had an office in DC and the deaf would come and there was a parade or a big not riot, but a big deal. They wanted to remove that issue. But then we lost. We failed. And AG Bell stayed strong still. And DC, still there. And that spread out that kind of emphasis on that oral program spread across the nation, and it's a huge problem.
Yeah, that AG bell. That's a frustrating one we deal with all the time, but I definitely don't support that. Yeah, I don't either. Mm-mm. No. All right. Anybody have some last minute questions or feel like you have enough information to write your 2 pages? Seth, I think because you came in late, did you have a question that you'd like to ask Myra?
Yeah, sure. You mentioned like I just from hearing what like after your story because I got here a little late. You mentioned that your childhood was like pretty hard overall. Well, like with that knowledge, have you ever like considered like hearing implants or like helping devices for like deaf or hard of hearing?
Oh no. No. You mean like for myself? Like if I would get implants myself? No. No.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've used hearing aids before when I was younger and I had like the FM system that I'd wear around my neck. It was like a mic that went into my ears. I would wear that when I was in school growing up. When I was 14, I got my hearing aids. But that's all. Yeah. All right. Great. I think we're done then if we have no more questions. Looks like we're good. All right. Yes, thank you, Myra. Thank you all so much. Yes, yes. Thank you for coming, presenting this evening. We really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll see you again. Hopefully you'll come down to Florida and visit, right? Or maybe we'll all go visit, right? Maybe we'll all go to Vegas and we'll see the students there, right? I don't know. Who knows what the future holds, right? All right. Thank you all so much. No more questions, right? We're good? All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time. I know it's late where you are. You can go ahead and go to bed now. Yep, it's midnight, so I'm ready. Yeah, we'll get done at 12:30, but that's all right. Explain a couple more things and we'll be out of here. All right. Good luck, all of you, with your class. Good luck. I hope you all do well. All right. Bye-bye. Oh, and thank you, interpreters. You bet. I know it's a lot of work to voice and go back and forth and everything. Great job.